Hi, it's Evelina back again with another roundup of what's new. This month, I'm speaking to Simeon, our principal educator, who's back educating us in his latest Sanity Learn course on AI assisted development. I'm also speaking to Ken, who's created a Nuxt template, and he'll share about how you can start using that today. He also talks about how you can actually create your own templates. Finally, speaking to John about the personalization plugin that's recently been released. I know he and the customer solution team has been working hard, and I know a lot of customers have been dying to try this out. There's so much going on in the community and at Sanity, and I don't have time to unpack everything in this video. So do go and read the What's New blog post. But first, let's watch this. Hi, Simeon.
Hey, Evelina. How you going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Nice. Well, we're going to talk about your recent Learn course today. Would be great if you could first just like introduce yourself. I know everyone probably knows you, but if there's anyone that's new in the community, can you just like a brief introduction of who you are and then go through a little bit about why you did this new Learn with AI course?
Sure. My name's Simeon. I am a bit ubiquitous across all of our marketing and educational services, but mostly I work on Sanity Learn, which is our educational platform that has a lot of course material and lesson material on how to apply all of the documentation and all the features of Sanity and put those to use in your real world day to day job. That's kind of the focus of Sanity Learn is how do you get better at work when you are using Sanity. So yeah, I wrote this course recently on using AI to power your Sanity development to hopefully get you to do even better work even faster with a lot of these AI tools.
Awesome. Let's dive into the demo, shall we? I'm gonna add it
Sure.
to stage.
So this is the course on Sanity Learn. I had a moment of inspiration a few weeks ago where I feel like I finally cracked the code on having a point of view on how to work with AI tooling, and that's through a lot of like following particular developers and educators on Twitter and a few conversations on the Code and Content podcast, which you must subscribe and like to as well. And so I wrote this course very, very quickly, and thankfully, with the power of AI, was able to write this course very quickly as well. But I'll sort of give a top-down overview of all of this. I think what helped me really crack the code was that AI isn't going to do all of the job for you. I think if you've only had a very distant view of what AI can do for development, is that perhaps you've been oversold this idea that AI will replace all critical thinking and all of your skills, and it will do everything for you based off of a very short description. But really, it's a new skill and a new tool. That's how I'm really seeing it. So sort of speak about that in the opening lesson. I'm just going to sort of go down lesson by lesson and pull out a few points here. There's a full end-to-end tutorial if you'd rather watch this. I think the video is about 25 minutes long on YouTube that we could link to as well. And you can watch that as well, or you can do it piece by piece on the Sanity Learn Here course as well. And so understanding how to use AI with Sanity development is covered in the first lesson, and then how to write effective prompts. So typically the way that we're working with AI currently, and hopefully this will change because it still kind of feels quite primitive and very early, is to type into a text box or chat into a text box. We'll cover in a moment. But knowing how to do that effectively is a real key skill. I'm someone who like runs like at a bulleted gate and gets tunnel vision and just wants to chase directly to the end very quickly and doesn't really like to stop and think about the context of what I'm actually asking. So
Mm,
knowing how to ask for what you want correctly is a really key skill, and being able to define a project and or like define requirements first and then ask the computer or ask the LLM to do that. That's a really key sort of thing to think about. So there's a few tips on how to write better prompts and be more effective there because, yeah, I think probably the experience many people have, and it's the experience I had, was that you sort of type in a prompt to ChatGPT or something, and it gives you really middling results, and you're like, "Well, this is terrible. Why does everybody rave about this?" But it can, unfortunately, be a skill issue of not really writing a very good prompt. So, getting better at prompting is sort of a very key skill working with AI.
awesome. Something I need to get better at. So,
Well, I think we're all figuring it out. And actually, I just wrote a blog post this week on my own personal blog, actually, about it's a new way of thinking. We've never had to communicate with humans. No, sorry, we've never had to communicate with anything but humans in English before. So I talk to my dog
No,
all
you're
the
right.
time, but she doesn't respond, right? But I talk in English in my own language to an LLM, and it responds in English, but it's not a human. It's There's so many things about LLMs that aren't human. It will just break your trust and lie to you in a way that, like, a human, if it wanted to nurture a long lasting relationship, wouldn't do that. And
No,
so
you're
I think
right.
it's
You're right.
I think this is like, yeah, maybe we can feel like, oh, I'm not a very good prompter, but this is a new skill for all of us. So I think we're all sort of learning in real time about how to work with these machines, because they are some very new entity in our world that we've not had before. So it's fine. We'll all figure it out. And I think some of the new models are getting better too at sort of asking clarifying questions if it's not sure. So where the older models will just like answer you whether it's a lie or whether it knows the full context or not. Some are better at actually asking questions now, which is great too. So writing code with AI assistants, there's a bunch of different code editors that will do that. GitHub Copilot's been sort of leading that for years. But this whole course is about using Cursor, which I know is getting an awful lot of pickup at the moment within the offices of Sanity too. And so that's what the
Mhm.
course is based on, is using Cursor. I'm not sure if you're using that, Evelina, at the moment.
I haven't. I've been using ChatGPT mostly, but I've been kind of just using it to kind of sometimes just understand things or like finish writing tests when I'm lazy enough to like I don't want to write. Tests are super important, but they can be really boring to write, especially when you
Yeah.
just want to like when you have many tests to write. So I've been using that to like kind of finalize some tests. So it's on my list to use Cursor as well. So this is a great course for me.
Sure. And I think Cursor is just, it's kind of got the best UI at the moment that of the editors that I've used, of just like integrating those AI tools and that chatting
Mm.
into the code itself. And so in the next lesson, we look at doing voice dictation for prompts, which is another huge unlock for me because I'm quite lazy. I don't like to type out the prompts that I write. There's something about it that feels like busy work to me. I'm not sure what that is, but, and I can type 100 words a minute, but I just don't like typing prompts. But getting voice dictation for prompts is really fantastic. And like, I can give a quick demo of that. I like to use an app called Super Whisper, which lets me say, "Hey, this lesson was really great. Thanks for that." And I could send that feedback immediately into the form here on Sanity Learn, which I always encourage you to do if there's something that perhaps we've missed. But using your voice to write prompts is a huge productivity unlock that I found personally with using these AI tools. And that's using AI behind the scenes to do voice dictation at that speed. Of course, your computer probably has voice dictation like Siri, but it's just not nearly as good as a lot of those applications that do the same thing. Um, then with the AI rules, that's important when you're working with Cursor, is you can sort of give it context for every action that it takes. And so this was really cool because a long time ago, I published this guide called An Opinionated Guide to Sanity Studio. And this is just something that I've always personally followed. And these are things that I've always personally thought were really important about how to structure schema and how to structure files and things. And now we live in an age where you don't have to read all of this and store it in your own personal memory, but rather you can feed it to an LLM and it will always use this as the guide on how to write code. So that's very cool. Again, just another huge unlock for me was like when you're getting LLMs to write code, it will usually do the most average or the most normal thing that it expects to do, but it won't necessarily do like the best practice or the most advanced or
Mm.
the very best version of that code. So doing things like um, writing schemas, for example, making sure there's always a description, making sure there's validation, making sure they're put into groups or use icons. Those are things that an LLM won't do by default because it's not the expectation. But when you tell it, hey, I actually want you to fill it out in this way, and that's what those rules can do, that's been really, really cool as well. Um, Rapidly generating placeholder content. I think this really shows why Sanity is really powerful in the age of working with AI tooling, is because it can do everything in code, including writing content and importing that in code. So
Mm.
sometimes you might use this to write a script that writes code. And again, this is something that I've got a few guides out there on how to write content using the Faker JS library. And I've done a whole series of content about writing migration scripts where now I can just get AI to do that. So in this particular lesson here, we say, take a look at the schema, write a file that's in the same format as if you exported a Sanity data set, and then you can import that. And that's always been quite basic for basic data structures, but for doing things like nested arrays or references or portable text, for example, those are quite tricky things to write by hand, but that's what AI really excels at, is doing the sort of that busy grunt work, which is really cool. And then at the end of the course is just adding Sanity to any front end. And in this lesson, I think I wrote that this is kind of a first for me as someone who's written a lot of guides and a lot of instructions, is always going through guides has been like going step by step. I'm expecting you to do the same thing I'm going to do, but AI
Mm,
allows us to do things like in this lesson I've said, hey, I'm going to pick Astro, but you pick whatever you want. Like, really, the power of this should be that you should be able to ask it for any front end, even maybe one that you don't necessarily understand. So I didn't know Astro, and that's why I picked it for this particular lesson. But this is sort of the blessing and the curse and the excitement and the dread of writing course material in the AI era, is that I can say, hey, I'm going to do this, you do what you like, and we should end up at a similar conclusion. And that's pretty powerful and quite amazing. So yeah, that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the AI course, and it's been really well received. The YouTube video in particular, I know a lot of people have found that quite useful. And there's probably a future where this is the onboarding guide or like a
mm.
version of this. So currently with the Day One with Sanity Studio course, which is kind of the main onboarding that we recommend everybody take with Sanity Learn, there's probably a future where that's actually strapped full of AI tooling. And I think this will be the default way that we do a lot of this work. We're kind of in an awkward phase now, working out what's best practice, what does that look like, and the tools are constantly evolving. But yeah, there's a not too distant future where I think this is what your first Sanity experience will look like as well.
No, it's awesome. I think it's super cool that you've been able to like push this out quickly so people can start using this and trying it out. And like you said, like it is like we're in an interesting stage in, the AI era right now. And like
Mhm.
how will the future look like? No one knows, right? But I really, really enjoyed your episode with Maggie Appleton on this. And I think it was super interesting to hear like both yours and her thoughts around the future of how you would work with AI and like co-work instead of kind of just like being prompt engineer. You also want to be educated on what are you doing, what can I do better, and all of this. Like what are your hopes, I guess, for the future when it comes to like learning and coding with AI? Because this is like we're talking about learn, right? Like you do want to learn something when you're doing something. You don't want to just like
Mhm.
or I wouldn't wanna just, like, prompt something and then just copy paste and then take it over. Like, I do wanna learn in the process of, like, understanding what I'm doing to be able to debug later. I think that's really, really important when you're doing these things, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's comforting in a way when it actually requires a little bit of extra thinking, because I
Mm,
guess the fear that a lot of us have had is that, does this make me no longer required, right? Like, is the AI truly going to do everything? But then I've seen a lot of best practice guidance out there. It's like, if you want the best results out of AI, here's the 19 things you need to do. And it's like, well, that amount of effort looks akin to reading the docs. So it's not like, I think the people who are getting the best results out of AI tooling are still putting in some amount of effort to like, to scope the context of what they're doing, or very clearly define what they need, or making sure the AI is writing tests along with the code that it's writing, all those sorts of things. So yeah, we're not yet there where you just type half of your idea into a box and see it happen. It does require that new skill development to work with it, and I hope this plays some small part in this. And I'm sure this is going to continue to evolve as well, because these best practices are still emerging, and we're all at the very beginning of this.
definitely. If you were a junior engineer, starting out today, would you recommend vibe coding, or do you think it's important to also learn, fundamentals first before you start to
Yeah, I mean,
predominantly
I think
use
the vibe
AI to
coding is
code?
great
Because I feel
because
like
you
fundamentals
get
are
that.
so important, but
Yeah, I think vibe coding is great because you get that immediate feedback, right? Like, so
mm,
you got the feeling like you did something, and that's so invaluable because so long as you're exciting, you're going to stick at something, right? And
sure.
sometimes I look back on the things that I know now and think, how did I ever put up with those difficult stages of banging my head against a wall? Like learning React the first
Mm,
time, learning TypeScript the first time. It's like, then once you've
yeah, I
learned it, I
remember
look
those
back and think,
times.
man, how did I put up with that? Like, that was a
Yeah.
really annoying period. And if you get to like jump over that essentially and just get like that satisfaction of, hey, I've got an idea and now it's working, I think that's cool as heck. But I suppose my encouragement, for whatever it's worth, back to junior engineers would be, just keep asking the AI what it did, and make sure that you are learning, because I think um, this is the easy thing to do, is ask for it to do something and it does it, and you just move on to the next thing instead of being very critical about, well, how did you do that, or why did you
Mm.
do it that way? And yeah, I would like some way to keep investigating why the code's been written in that way, or what the problem being solved in is, or instructing the AI to make sure it leaves comments through the code, for example, so that you could read things and debug it. Maybe there's a future where we don't actually need to read the code, but I would imagine you would get a much better experience that, yeah, even if the code being written for you just works, it would be good to make sure that you can still jump in and read it at some point.
Definitely. And I think sometimes it might be, it might just work when you're doing like a personal project, but if you're actually working in more like professional setting and like, have a bigger context window of putting this in somewhere, right? Like there might be so many more things that you're not adding to the context of AI. So later on, you might, that might lead to bugs that you need to understand. So you need to understand the code that's been written, right? So I think it's so much, very much valuable to understand code. But I agree. Like I think it's a much lower barrier, right, to enter coding today with AI, obviously, than it was for us when we started out. So I think that's super cool. I agree with the TypeScript thing. That was something that I struggled with for a while, and I would have definitely been helpful to have AI at that point. But yeah.
Very good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Super inspiring. I will need to go through this course as well, and I'm looking forward to it. Awesome.
All right. Great.
Hi, Ken.
Hey, Evelina, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Nice. Well, we're going to talk about your new Nuxt template, aren't we?
That is correct.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah,
Can you first just introduce yourself a little bit and then just share what you've done, and then we can head into the demo?
sure. I am Ken Jones. I am a community experience engineer, and part of my role here is working on our templates, and just engaging with our community. So that is what I'm here to talk about. I recently
Awesome.
have updated our Nuxt template. Um, I'm kind of going through and updating our templates. I recently did our next template before this a couple months ago, and the Nuxt template is the newest one.
Cool. Well, let's demo it, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, start off. This is the repo that for our Sanity template, Nuxt clean. This is kind of our basic minimal-ish starter template. And I say minimal-ish because I have baked in um, some opinionated starting points. So some I have an idea of pages. I have an idea of blog posts. Um, but yeah, and I think the best way to actually show this template is going to be to show you how quick it is to get installed, and just get up and running with it. And then we'll look at a little bit more of the features once we've done that. Does that sound good?
Sounds good. Love a live demo.
Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous, but we'll see how it goes.
We'll be fine. We'll be fine.
Cool. Um, so really, just to start, I'm here in the terminal, and Um, if you didn't know at this point, we can actually install Sanity templates with our CLI tool. Basically, just flagging that we're installing a template and then adding the namespace for our template. So I'm going to go ahead and install this Nuxt template just by running this command. Um, this is going to walk us through setting up just a new project. So I'll just call this Nuxt demo. We choose an organization.
I love that you're your own organization. The Ken Jones organization. Sorry. Continue.
Yep. And then we'll choose our data set. And this is just kind of the basics of setting up a Sanity project in general, going through these, choosing an organization, choosing your data set. I'm going to choose my output path for the project. And now we are installing everything. So this is probably the part that takes the longest, but it should only take a couple more seconds.
Yeah, I feel
Cool.
like that's a normal thing for when you install something.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we can just go ahead and CD into our Nuxt demo directory. And from here, we're ready to go ahead and npm run dev. This is great. As you noticed, I didn't have to npm install. I didn't have to set up any environment variables. All of that has been done by our CLI tool.
Nice.
So when I run this, it's going to run our Sanity Studio and our Nuxt front end. So our next project is running on localhost 3000. We have our Sanity Studio running on localhost 3333. That's why I'm going to open up our Sanity Studio. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. And just with that simple install, we should be up and running.
Wow, that
Great.
was quick. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have our front end.
Mhm.
We actually don't have any content because our data set is empty,
Mhm.
but we can fix that very quickly. Here in my terminal, I'm going to just go ahead and just open up a new tab, but I can run an install script that will import sample data. And this is just basically importing a data set that I already have in the repo. But when I run this, just go ahead and put that on our production data set. But when I run this, we'll actually see it go ahead and populate here in the background. So as data is added to our project, to our data set, it's added into our front end, and we're ready to go. I mean, this is a fully functioning Nuxt application as of now.
That was very
Um,
smooth.
yeah, so I don't know how long it's been, but this, you can see how quick this was to get
Mhm.
installed. Um, After this, you could deploy to Vercel or anywhere that you want to deploy. But we're ready to go. You can already see here that we're set up with presentation mode, so our visual editing, and this just works out of the box. Now we can make content changes. We can maybe look at this blog post. Um, I can change the title here. And you can see how quickly this is
Yeah.
all just set up working. We have our draft state of this document. So this is the blog post. I also have an idea of a page. So if we look at a page, we have a title, and I've also built in a very simple page builder. What's great about page builders is that it allows you to use the same front end components to quickly spin up countless pages.
Mm.
I only have these two sort of ideas of an info section and a call to action section that we're looking at right here. But we can see how quickly this is to arrange a page. If I reorder these, we can see that these two elements have reordered on our page. So, you think your website needs 10, 20 types of different layout components. This is a good starting point for that, to go ahead and add your own front end components.
Nice. I think this is so I love when you just get going on something, it's something's already there, right? Like it just works and like you already have something to build with. I feel like that is something I've missed sometimes when I use templates or like I'm kind of like setting up a new project and I'm like, it's just empty. And like, I feel like all developers know this. Like, it's like when you need to create variant names and all of this, it's like, oh, I can't come up with a
Sure.
name, right? Same with like creating like just example. Like this, it's just so great to just get going and like start using something. And I feel like that's what you've really done here. So,
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. That is the idea, to have something that looks nice enough. Something that's minimal,
mm,
but just a good starting point for any Nuxt application.
yeah. No, it's great. I know you've been working on templates for a long time and creating templates. And also, I know that you're working on highlighting some of the community templates, right?
Yeah, no, that's a great spin-off point. Very true. I have a goal in the very near future to start highlighting the templates that our community makes. So some of the best templates, I'm going to come up with a template spotlight video every month, 6 weeks, and highlight a template. So If you have great template ideas, ideas that you would like to show off, feel free to start submitting templates,
Yeah.
and I'll take a look at those and get those vetted, and you just might make the template spotlight video.
Cool. Well, maybe I'll go ahead and create a template. I feel like that would be a fun challenge. No, I'm kidding. No, it's really cool. Do you have? Is there kind of a way to create your templates? Like this is how we want people to like get going with that. Um,
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we have a couple resources. Um, the main resource is going to be this page in our docs for creating your own Sanity template.
mm,
Um, this is a great resource. This kind of covers the basics of making a template. Um, if it were me, I would do as this article recommends and start with our template kit. Um, I'll go and open this up. But this basically is a bare bones repo, or this is a mono repo, but you can use a single package repo. You can use an embedded studio. This is actually a very flexible template pattern, but you can use this template to kind of get you started. Really just it'll walk you through installing your dependencies, setting up an environment variable with the proper sanity or the proper environment variable names.
mhm.
Um, let me hop back into that that guide. You'll see step two is initializing your front end. So this is really the fun part. This is where you'll build your own front end, whether it's a website, mobile application, whatever your template is going to build. This
Mhm.
is where we can talk about that. Yeah, continuing on to build your template. Um, what's really cool, and something that I'm really proud of our growth team. Our growth team is amazing. They
Yeah,
have set up.
they they grow so fast. I was gonna say they're so growth
Yeah,
mindset, right? Like they're just like continuously just pushing things. It's great.
yeah, absolutely. I basically stood on their shoulders to make templates as they have created this template kit, and they've
Hmm.
created a template validator tool. Um, and we'll also link to the repo for this template validator.
Yes, for sure.
Uh, what's great about this is that you can run this template validator. You can run it as an npm script in your project, or you can run it as a GitHub action, and it will return to you whether your template passes validation. And it needs to pass validation to be installed via that command line interface
Mm,
that I showed you at the very beginning when we installed the Nuxt template.
yeah.
Um, there's some pretty simple rules here, but they have to be followed. So if you have a single package repo, that's where you'll follow these rules. Really just
Hmm.
making sure that Sanity is part of your package.json, making sure you have the appropriate Sanity files, and making sure that you have an environment.template file
Yeah.
for your environment variables. And pretty similar for mono repos. You can read through these, but basically just making sure you have those same files.
Sweet. Well, I feel like people know exactly how to get going now. I did forget to ask actually, if people want to use your Nuxt template, how should they go about doing that? Is it just going to like the GitHub repo and just, checking it out, or what do you advise people to do next?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways that you can do it. The quickest way is going to just be to go to our website, go to developers, templates, and we can see here this newest Nuxt, clean Nuxt template. If we click on this, the quickest way is going to be just to click use template.
Hmm.
Um, that will walk you through an onboarding where you'll create your project name, and then it'll kind of spit you out into a step-by-step guide to getting started. Um, Also, you can just go to the repo, the GitHub repo, and not far down in step one, I have that install script that you'll use.
Sweet.
So pretty quick, pretty easy to get
Yeah.
started, in my opinion.
Definitely. And it's nice to have like some sort of onboarding as well. I feel like some people might just want to head to the repo straight away. And that's obviously fine, just get going. But it's always, I think, nice when maybe you're new to something to like have a little bit of onboarding to be like, what am I actually doing? You
Yeah.
know, and just getting kind of familiarized. That was a hard word for me to say. Apparently, English is not my first language. I say that always when I say something wrong. But yeah, I think it's great. So do you have anything else to add? Or I feel like this was a great walkthrough of how to get going. So
Yeah, no, only other thing from me. I mentioned the growth team. They've helped out immensely on our template projects. Also want to shout out Daniel Rowe for his creation of the Nuxt Sanity toolkit.
mhm.
This makes adding Sanity to a Nuxt project extremely simple. Um, I already have it installed in the template, but just want to highlight Daniel's amazing work. And our some of our developers have also contributed to that package, but Daniel is, I believe, the one of the lead maintainers on the Nux team.
Mm,
So it's really cool to have his support here.
definitely. Always great to collaborate on these kind of things. So, well,
Sure.
thank you for coming on and for showing this. And I hope people check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Hi, John.
Hi, yeah.
Hi,
How are
how
you
are
doing?
you?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you so much for joining today. We're gonna speak about something that's really cool that you've built, well, with the customer solution teams, right?
Yeah,
That's called the personalization plugin. Can you briefly introduce yourself, and then maybe just share a little bit why you decided to build this now? I know there's been like a lot of demand from the community on this, and then we can head into the demo.
sure. Yeah, hi. I'm John, a solutions architect here at Sanity. I work with our enterprise clients to help them get the best out of Sanity and to help them with any issues or struggles or anything that they're going through. And yeah, just work with them day to day as a sort of technical contact for them here at Sanity.
Nice,
Cool.
cool. And why did you decide to build this now? I guess.
So, one of the things that we hear from our customers is they're always wanting to do sort of personalization or A/B testing or something along those lines, but
Mm.
it can be a bit tricky, and there's a few different ways of doing it. So we thought we've got some opinions on how we think it should be done, and we wanted to pass those on and to make it as easy as possible for our sort of customers to be able to do personalization and A/B testing. So we've built this plugin. And yeah,
Nice.
hopefully it should
Well,
be cool.
let's demo it, I think. Uh,
Sure. Yeah. So this is just a studio that I've built based off the Day One with Sanity course that you can do on Sanity Learn. Um, so what I've done is I've added our plugin and I've defined a type of experiment that I want to do on sort of string fields. So adding to our schema, you just add the sort of the name field for A/B testing, and then this will add this field as an object with a few sort of things that you can do for there. Sorry, there. So sorry. What you can do when it's been added, it will give you the option to add an experiment. So if we add an experiment, this will pull through experiments that you've defined. So you can define experiments in a few different ways. You can either hard code them into the config for the plugin. You can fetch them from an external source. That could be a A/B testing feature flagging provider, or it could even be just somewhere else inside Sanity. This case, this one's just hard coded. And when you select that, that gives you the option to add variants that you want to be able to use. So this one has variants for control. So we can copy the default value to use in this case, or we can add another variant. And let's just add something to make this a bit different. So what I can see now, I can now connect up to my front end. And if we have a look here, we can see this is the page for this particular experiment. I've added a banner so I can just test removing a cookie that stores the details of the user and the variant so that we can get that information.
if I
That makes
remove it.
sense. Did you
Ah,
publish it though? Sorry. I was like, did you
oh,
publish it?
no, sorry.
It's
Okay.
easily done. Live demo it happens. I was just like, I was like, I think you didn't publish it. Didn't want to disturb
Yeah,
your flow, but
there we go. All right. So yeah, with that published, then you can go remove the cookie. Because it's random which variant you get served based on the cookie. It
yeah,
sometimes take a few, but there we go. Come.
There we go.
Uh,
Nice.
there we go. So that's certainly one sort of basic sort of method you might do for using, like, replacing an article name or a description or something like that in some content.
I think it's
One of
super
the other
cool. I
options that we see.
actually, sorry, I interrupted you.
Well,
I just wanted to say that
uh,
it's super cool. Like I come from a data driven, very much like data driven decision when it comes and very heavy on like A/B testing everything. Like the old company I used to work for a lot of holidays, and we did a lot of field level actually A/B testing, but we didn't obviously do it in Sanity. But I think it's really cool that you can do, because sometimes it's literally about, does this text work or does this title work? And I think like that
yeah,
just helps so much when you have this plugin. So yeah, sorry, continue.
yeah, no, and same from where I came for previously. We did a lot of A/B testing around like thumbnails and things like that, because that was also one
Yeah.
of the big drivers. But so in this version of the studio, what I've actually done is set up a document type for storing those experiments. So here I've just got two experiments: one that would do for a homepage, for testing something on homepage; one to do around like a sign up newsletter sort of thing like that. So there's another example of what I've done with this is a routing based experiment. So here we define a path for this experiment, and we've listed the experiment, and basically we just say randomly assign this to the person, and they'll either see the standard homepage or they'll see a variant of the homepage which we've defined, and that variant is a dark mode. So let's have a look. So if we test this one again,
Yeah, it's random, right? Like,
there we go.
yeah,
But yeah,
there we go.
and it comes back. So there we have that's the variance there.
Mhm.
The other option that we saw was sort of a newsletter sign up form. Now, this is actually showing off the plugin sort of working with references. So this is actually
Mhm.
referencing off to a document that's storing the schema for a newsletter sign up form. This is based on, well, this is actually using a new plugin as well called the Form Toolkit that we've also been working on. So in this instance, we're trying to test how much information you can get from a user before they're not actually going to fill out a form, because you want to get as much information, but the most important thing is to get the signups on that form. So I've got three different versions of this. And then if we have a look at that on the front end, again, yeah. So this is just randomly serving them. And again, with it being stored as a cookie, it's going to persist for that user every time for this. And this might not be something that you just see on this particular page. This might be a config that you can store, so it could be used on all of your pages. So this might just be a modal or something that appears everywhere. One of the other things that I mentioned was we can connect up to third parties. So the experiments for this particular, the details for this particular experiment are actually coming from LaunchDarkly, which is a A/B testing feature flagging provider. You can see we've got these are the two sort of feature flags that they have, and these are the variants that are being pulled through from that. So if we go check out the details in LaunchDarkly, we can see we've got these two feature flags, and the variants are coming through from that. So then on the front end, the traffic management for those of who gets to see each variant is also coming through from LaunchDarkly. So it's all tied into that. And you can get some of the analytics sent back into LaunchDarkly, so you can test how your experiments are actually running. So there's a few of those different versions of that. One of the other things that I was thinking about is people aren't just doing A/B testing. Their A/B testing might not exactly match what we're describing here.
So
Mhm.
you can overwrite the names of like the experiment or the variant. So here, this is an example of something you might be using to show personalized content based on a user's logged in status. So you show them some bit of content if they're logged in or if they're in an anonymous state. So that might be something that you want to do with this plugin as well.
Awesome. God, so that dog really scared me. I was like,
Sorry.
"Whoa." No, 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 it's fine. I thought it was, the dog, that I live like, my friend's dog. It's fine. All good.
Okay.
No, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all these different use cases. I feel like everyone wants to, get as much out of their, experimentation as possible, and even if that's not even actual A/B testing, it's more like personalization, but I feel like that's one type of experimenting, right? So,
Yeah.
I think this is super cool. I know there's also a learn course, right? So if people want to like dive deeper into the concepts of A/B testing, with Sanity and these other kind of platforms, they can go to that, right?
Yeah, in that I've shown them how they can pretty much set this code up. So it's
Nice.
how they can set up the A/B testing platform,
Mm.
sorry, how they can set up the studio, and how they can sort of get the front end working just in the same way that I've done on this. And that's all based on that Sanity Day One course that's also on Learn.
Awesome. Well, I feel like people have lots of stuff to dive into. So thank you so much for just sharing your knowledge and building out these demos so to visualize for people even better. Because I know I'm a very visual learner, so it helps when you see these different things like coming together. So yeah, thanks.
No, pleasure. Thanks very much.
Thanks for tuning in. I hope you learned something. As always, I'm going to link everything we talked about in description so you can start exploring on your own. You can start using the personalization plugin, start learning about A/B testing, start optimizing your vibe coding journey, so many things. You can also read about all of these things in the What's New blog post, like I mentioned earlier. If you want to learn from more experts, I'm also going to link all the talks from our latest meetup. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.